We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Vladimir Putin wins the Russian presidential polls for a record fifth term. Says ready for talks on French proposal for a Ukraine ceasefire during the Olympics. Commenting on Navalny's death for first time, Putin says he supported prisoner exchange for him. Israel and Hamas are expected to resume stalled ceasefire talks in Qatar, even as Netanyahu remains adamant on going ahead with Rafah assault plan. North Korea launches multiple ballistic missiles as South hosts a summit of democracy. Japan terms North Korean action unacceptable, saying it will further advance close trilateral cooperation with the US and South Korea. And in tennis, Alcaraz beats Medvedev to win second straight Indian Wells title. In women's single, Swiatek crushes Sakari to win second title. And on to the details now. Having secured another term as Russia's president, Vladimir Putin said he never promises anything he cannot fulfill. Speaking at his headquarters, the politician said that Russia has all the conditions to become stronger. He thanked Russians for their participation in the election that lasted 3 days. Dasha Chernyshova is in Moscow with more.
Спасибо. Спасибо большое.
Vladimir Putin secured another presidential term with a landslide victory. After the announcement of preliminary results by the Russian electoral authorities, Vladimir Putin said that they were a proof of the Russian people's trust. Speaking at his election headquarters in Gostinny Dvor in Moscow, he said Russia will remain strong no matter who wants to suppress it. Putin thanked all Russian citizens who voted in the election and emphasized that the source of power in Russia is its people. He linked the high turnout in the election, which exceeded the expected 70%, with the fact that Russians understand that their voices matter, as their country, quote, is defending its development. Commenting on the West's reaction to the election in Russia, Putin said it was expected as the Western countries fight with Moscow and want to spur its development. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that Putin had no time to celebrate his victory. Moscow accused Ukraine of attempting to derail presidential election by stepping up attacks against Russian regions, and the West of encouraging certain individuals to extremism in Russia, as there were attempts to spoil ballots and set fire at the polling stations. Dasha Chernyshova reporting in Moscow for DD India.
Well, Russian President Vladimir Putin said Russia was ready for talks on a French proposal for a ceasefire in Ukraine during the Olympic Games on Monday. Putin was speaking at his election headquarters in Moscow.
I do not know about this statement of France's president. We are ready to discuss any issues, but as always, within any situation, we will proceed from the interests of the Russian Federation and, of course, the situation at the front line.
Also, Putin had agreed to a prisoner swap involving opposition leader Alexei Navalny before his death in prison last month. He disclosed this information while adding that the main condition for the exchange was that Navalny would not return to Russia.
A few days before Mr. Navalny passed away, some colleagues told me, not members of the presidential administration, that there was an idea to exchange Mr. Navalny for some people who are imprisoned in Western countries. You may believe me, you may not. The person who spoke to me hadn't finished his sentence yet, and I said, I agree. But unfortunately, what happened is what happened. On one condition only, I said, we will change it so he doesn't come back, let him sit there. But things happen. There's nothing you can do about it.
An update now on Israel-Hamas conflict. Gaza ceasefire talks are expected to resume in Qatar. The talks would mark the first time both Israeli officials and Hamas leaders joined the indirect negotiations since the start of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. International mediators had hoped to secure a 6-week truce before Ramadan started earlier last week, but Hamas refused any deal that would not lead to a permanent ceasefire in Gaza, a demand Israel rejected. However, both sides have made moves in the past few days aimed at getting the talks. Also, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reaffirmed his determination to launch an offensive in Rafah. Netanyahu told a cabinet meeting on Sunday that Israel would push into Rafah, the last relatively safe place in Gaza after more than 5 months of conflict. He, however, said Israel will not leave civilians trapped in Rafah when its forces begin assault on the southern Gaza city.
Our goal in eliminating the remaining terrorist battalions in Rafah goes hand in hand with enabling the civilian population to leave Rafah. It's not something that we will do while keeping the population locked in place. In fact, we'll do the very opposite. We'll enable them to leave because our consideration for reducing and minimizing civilian casualties has guided us and will continue to guide us in the future.
Well, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz met Israeli Prime Minister in Jerusalem on Sunday. Speaking after talks, Scholz said he had shared his concerns about the civilian casualties and insufficient aid reaching Gaza. At a joint news conference with Netanyahu, Scholz said he spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about the need to provide comprehensive humanitarian aid to the people in Gaza.
We cannot stand by and watch Palestinians risk starvation. That's not us. That is not what we stand for together. Much more humanitarian aid is needed continuously, reliably. I shared my concerns with the Prime Minister that provision of aid from Israel into Gaza and the conditions for distribution must be urgently and massively improved.
And moving on, North Korea fired multiple short-range ballistic missiles into the sea on Monday for the first time in 2 months. South Korea's military said the missiles were fired to the east of the Korean peninsula. Japan's Coast Guard also said that North Korea had fired what could be a ballistic missile, and the missile appears to have already fallen outside its exclusive economic zone area. North Korea's military has been conducting exercises using conventional weapons in recent weeks. The show of force by Pyongyang comes as the militaries of South Korea and the United States carried out large-scale annual joint military drills for 10 days, ending last Thursday. This launch comes at a time when U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Seoul to attend the 3rd Summit for Democracy hosted by President Yoon Suk-yeol. And U.S. President Joe Biden and his predecessor Donald Trump took aim at each other in speeches delivered over the weekend as the two men prepare for a widely expected rematch for the White House. Mr. Biden questioned his rival's mental fitness, while Mr. Trump predicted a bloodbath if he lost in November. Our Washington correspondent Jagriti Dave has more.
One candidate is too old and mentally unfit to be president. The other is me. This is what Joe Biden joked to an international audience of journalists and politicians at a historic dinner here in Washington, D.C. that's been taking place for more than 130 years now. Now, Joe Biden, the 81-year-old Democrat, is himself facing questions about his own age and mental proficiency. So he took the opportunity to mock his Republican rival Donald Trump for his recent gaffes on the campaign trail, which have included apparently confusing Joe Biden for Barack Obama. Now, Donald Trump, meanwhile, called Joe Biden a stupid president in front of an audience at a rally in Ohio. He also made dark predictions about a bloodbath and the end of meaningful elections if he lost the race in November. Now, he also used offensive language about some migrants, saying that they're not people, in my opinion, and later called them animals. Now, the Biden campaign has said that the bloodbath reference was hinting at political violence. The Donald Trump campaign said that the comments were taken out of context and said that Donald Trump was actually just referring to the downfall of the American car industry under the Biden administration. Jagrati Dave in Washington, reporting for DD India.
And moving on, Colombia will suspend its months-long ceasefire with the Estado Mayor Central Armed Group in 3 provinces on Wednesday, citing incidents of violence that broke the ceasefire. The EMC began talks with President Gustavo Petro's government last year in a bid to end its part in Colombia's 60 years of war. The announcement of the end of the ceasefire did not mention any effect on the overall negotiations. Violence in many parts of Colombia has continued despite ongoing bilateral government ceasefire such as that with the EMC. The ceasefire with the EMC went into place last October with a January deadline before being extended through July 15th. However, a major leader of the EMC said that it would be difficult to reach a peace deal before the end of Petro's term in 2026 and that it would need the support of wider Colombian civil society to be successful. And in Spain, thousands of farmers once again protested with tractors in Madrid on Sunday, demanding better prices for their produce and denouncing European Union agricultural policies. Beginning early on Sunday morning, farmers from different communities have been travelling towards Madrid, causing traffic problems. The farmers marched after the EU proposed legislative changes to ease the environmental rules of the Common Agricultural Policy on Friday. The farmers argue that the EU's policies on the environment and other matters are a financial burden and make their products more expensive than non-EU imports. Spain's government has already made some concessions in an effort to placate the farmers, but agricultural groups have called those measures insufficient. Well, Brazil's Rio has set a new thermal sensation record after a neighborhood on the west side, Guaratiba, recorded 62.3 Celsius on Sunday. Guaratiba is prone to high temperatures due to its proximity to the ocean and warm northerly winds hitting the area. This is the highest thermal sensation recorded since the Rio Alert system began taking measurements in 2014. Residents flocked to beaches and pools to try to ease the heat, while others said sometimes there is not enough water to drink amid the high temperature. And now let's take a look at our stories from around the world. Lava flows from a volcano in southwest Iceland for the 4th time since December. Authorities have warned for eruption was imminent on the south of Iceland's capital, Reykjavik. The eruption began on Saturday evening, sending fountains of molten rock soaring from a roughly 3-kilometer-long fissure. 9 rail coaches of Bijoy Express derailed in Kamela, Bangladesh. Several people were reportedly injured. Several train services have been stopped after the incident. According to eyewitnesses, some coaches of the train were scattered from the line after the accident. Thousands of people lined the streets of Dublin on Sunday to mark the annual St. Patrick's Day parade. About 500,000 spectators thronged the parade to watch street performers hailing from Ireland and across the world. St. Patrick's Day observes the demise of patron saint of Ireland. The day has evolved into a celebration of Irish culture with parades, music, dancing and drinking with a wild lot of green. Some wearing tatas and ballet slippers, ballet enthusiasts filled Mexico City main square for a massive dance class. Attendance was free for the hundreds of dancers of various age groups who practiced plies and cambers while holding to bars installed for the event. The massive ballet class is the first of its kind in the city. And still to come at this edition of DD India Live. Campaigning picks up for India's general elections. PM Modi campaigns in southern states of the country. Election Commission asks the political parties to refrain from personal attacks. Indian Army and Seychelles Defence Forces begin their 10th edition of joint military exercise Lamitiye 2024 on Monday. Indian Air Force airlifts 120 stranded passengers from the snow-bound Kanzalwan area in North Kashmir to safety.
Corners cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts, we demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and moving on. The third meeting of the India-Maldives high-level core group was held in Malé on Sunday. During the meeting, both sides reviewed the ongoing deputation of Indian technical personnel to enable continued operation of Indian aviation platforms that provide humanitarian and medical evacuation services to the people of Maldives. Both sides continued their discussions on wide-ranging issues related to bilateral cooperation. It was agreed to hold the next meeting of the high-level core group in New Delhi on a mutually convenient date. Well, Indian Army and Seychelles Defence Forces begin their 10th edition of joint military exercise Lamitiye 2024 on Monday. The 10-day joint exercise will be conducted at Seychelles. 45 personnel, each from the Gorkha Rifles of the Indian Army and Seychelles Defence Forces, will participate in the exercise. The aim of the exercise is to enhance interoperability in sub-conventional operations in semi-urban environment under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter on Peacekeeping Operations. It will enhance cooperation and interoperability between both the sides during peacekeeping operations. It will also build and promote bilateral military relations in addition to exchanging skills, experiences and good practices between both the armies. And India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar dismissed the criticism from the United States regarding the Citizenship Amendment Act, asserting that the remarks were made without a proper understanding of the law's historical background. Speaking at a conclave in New Delhi, Dr. Jaishankar further stressed that the CAA was introduced to tackle the challenges arising from the partition and remarked that the global response seems to ignore the historical context of partition.
If you hear the comments from many parts of the world, it is as though the partition of India never happened. And that there were no consequential problems which the CAA is supposed to address. So if you take a problem, remove all the historical context from it, sanitize it and make it into a political correctness argument, and say, oh, I have principles and don't you have principles? I have principles too. And one of my principles is obligation to people who were let down at the time of partition.
And moving on, campaigning picks up as India prepares to hold the world's largest elections. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will campaign in southern states of the country on Monday. Meanwhile, the Election Commission has asked the political parties to refrain from personal attacks.
As India prepares for general elections, it is important to understand the country's current political scenario. There are two main players in the fray. On the one side is the National Democratic Alliance led by incumbent Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party. Challenging the NDA is the India Alliance or Indian National Developmental Inclusive Alliance, which was formed in 2023. While the NDA comprises nearly 40 mostly regional parties, the India Alliance has over 20 opposition parties, including the Congress and Samajwadi Party. The 2024 polls will be a test of new coalitions. The formation of the India Alliance also marked the end of the Congress-led United Progressive Alliance. Let's take a look at how the existing and former alliances performed in the last general elections that were held in 2019. A total of 542 constituencies went to polls. The NDA won 353 seats, out of which 303 seats were backed by the BJP alone. The UPA won 91 seats, out of which the Congress backed 52, while 98 seats went to other parties and independent candidates. Coming back to the present time, in the North Indian state of Uttar Pradesh, which has the highest number of parliamentary seats, the Congress and SP have struck a seat-sharing deal. Of the total 80 seats, the Congress will field its candidates in 17 constituencies, while SP and other parties of the alliance will contest from 63 constituencies. However, the opposition India Alliance has been struggling to keep its flock together. In another jolt to the India Alliance, Bihar State's incumbent Chief Minister, Janata Dal United Chief Nitish Kumar returned to the NDA. In the 2024 polls, Prime Minister Modi will be aiming for a third consecutive term. The India Alliance, however, has not floated a PM candidate as yet. Apart from the battleground states, including UP, Bihar and Maharashtra, elections will also be closely watched in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. This is the first general election after the abrogation of Article 370, which granted special status to the erstwhile state. J&K was also bifurcated into two union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Coming to poll issues and promises, PM Modi has vowed to make India the world's third largest economy. Also, recently inaugurated Ram Temple is expected to feature prominently in the BJP's campaigns. In 2019, building the temple was among the party's key promises. As for the opposition, the Congress decided to organize a national nationwide march called Bharat Jodo Nyay Yatra, or India Unity and Justice March, to garner public support. From issues to campaigning, elections in India are multifaceted, but first and foremost, they are a celebration of democracy which sees voters from all walks of life choose their representatives. Bureau Report, DD India.
And moving on, Indian Navy on Sunday released a video showing rescue of a cargo vessel that was hijacked by Somali pirates. A Navy spokesperson said the Indian Naval Forces, including special commandos, seized a cargo vessel, rescuing 70 crew members. The Navy spokesperson said maritime operations by India reflect their commitment towards reinforcing peace and stability in the region. The Navy said on Saturday all 35 pirates aboard the ship, the Maltese-flagged bulk cargo vessel Ruin, had surrendered and the ship had been checked for the presence of illegal arms, ammunition and contraband. The Ruin had been hijacked last year. The Navy said it had intercepted the vessel on the 15th of March. And now let's take a look at other stories making news today. 120 stranded passengers from the snowbound Kanzalwan area in North Kashmir's Bandipora district were airlifted to safety by district administration on Sunday. The Bandipora-Gurez road in northern Jammu and Kashmir has been blocked due to multiple snow avalanches. The Border Roads Organization has commenced an extensive clearance operation in the snow avalanche hit area. One of the biggest events showcasing the startup ecosystem of India, Startup Mahakumbh, will kickstart on Monday in New Delhi. The event will be held till March 20th at Bharat Mandapam. The event will feature sector-focused pavilions including AI, agri-tech, deep tech and climate technology. And news from the world of sports now. Iga Swiatek beat Maria Sakkari 6-4, 6-0 in the Indian Wells final on Sunday to claim the women's single title for a second time in California desert. In a rematch of the 2022 finals, world number 1 Swiatek came out firing, building a 3-0 lead. Swiatek, who did not drop a set all tournament, dominated the second, crushing a running backhand for a 3-0 lead and then breaking serve for 4-0 as the outmatch to Greek began to fade. Swiatek is now 19-4 in her career finals and 8-2 at the WTA 1000 level. The 22-year-old earned her 20th match win of the year, which leads the WTA Tour. Meanwhile, in men's singles, Carlos Alcaraz successfully defended his Indian Wells crown with a 7-6 win over Daniil Medvedev in the finals later on Sunday. In another rematch of last year's final, second seed Alcaraz smacked 25 winners to Medvedev's 11 and was especially effective against his opponent's second serves. The two-time major champion was stung on the forehead when a swarm of bees invaded the court on Thursday, kept his number 2 ranking by ending Jannik Sinner's 19-match winning streak in the semis and slayed the big serving 4th seed Medvedev in the finals. All right, that's all for this edition of DD India Live. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.